Hello, this is Bunting, and per popular demand, we'll be diving even deeper into the deep dubs with a Ternion Sound style arrangement. Let's hear it. Hope you like that arrangement because you know how we do it. I start with the drums, I get all the sound design and arrangement covered just for you, and some more general tips at the end, right? But keep your finger guns holstered for just a second, because first I'm asking that you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe. Only around half of you subscribe. These things would help me out very much, and I would be grateful, right? But if you want to further extend your support, you can do so at my website, buntingmusic.com. I have samples, presets, lessons, and more, both free and paid, as well as I have a Patreon where you can get all the presets I made individually in this project file, as well as the project file itself. Okay, but sellout time aside, let's actually start breaking it down with the drums. Okay. So as you can tell, this is a bit more complex than most styles we cover. But it's nothing too crazy, just a few echoey, dubby gimmicks should get you on your way, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is show you this kick snare pattern. Very basic, very classic, you know, the 140 BPM. As for the kick sample though, for this deep dubby style, a lot of times you want it really thumpy. And that generally means you want the kick hitting low notes, hitting low sub notes, and not having a whole lot of high frequencies. So if you can't find a thumpy kick like this, which is in my waves pack, you can just low pass it or cut it on the EQ to get a similar thumpy effect on really any kick, you know? But the snare is more interesting. What's going on here? Let's turn off these effects to talk about the actual sample first. So for whatever reason in deep dub, the sound that's stuck around for the snare is what we call a rim shot. So if I look up a rim shot, that's not a rim shot, sure. It's essentially, it's like a snare, except it's more atonal. It's more of a click than like a doof. So if I were to pull up, you see it's hitting like a doof, doof, right? While this snare, the T snare, is just hitting a kind of a click. For whatever reason, that's the snare people like to use. It sounds good in this style, right? And it really sounds good with these effects on it. So as for effects, the first thing I did, you notice it gets a bit more loud and percussive, is I got this drum bus. Drum bus is really a godsend for drums. What I like to do on it is I like to turn down this drive so it's not being distorted, this decay because it leaves weird artifacts, and then I turn up the damp so it's not low passed, and just mess with this transients. I like to turn it to -1. It just makes it much punchier at first and much just shorter. You know, it shortens it, it punches it up. It just sounds good to me. Use it on kicks, use it on snares, use it on anything. Have fun. Right? But the sauce, and I mean the sauce, is in these dub presets, right? So lucky for us, you don't have to do any work because Ableton provides the dub. Ableton is the dub plug, as some might say. But I just use fake dub room, but you also have these analog triplet dubs and dub syndicates. These are more like atmospheric, echoey, while the fake dub room is more of kind of like a reverb effect. So let me just put them on their own so you can hear what's going on. So already it sounds pretty good. I like to turn off the noise because I don't need those kind of noisy vinyl effects. And really you're good there. You know, you can mess with the reverb, have more or less. You can change the frequencies. Sometimes it's nicer to have a bit more high end, a bit less mid range. This is kind of just EQ almost. Yeah, but there's a few cool things you can do with this dub room. That should be a familiar dubby effect. Just cranking that feedback up gives you that really cool, like, springy effect. I don't know. It's just really cool to mess with. In addition to that, messing with the time makes for some really trippy effects, you know? And you could automate all this stuff to change it in real time. I think that's what I did. Yeah, see some of my hits I have messing around. I think I meant for it to be different than this, but that's how it played out. The analog triplet dub though, you see I'm messing with the dry and wet, so it kind of fades in and out, and then I change the position to give it that boom, 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 pitching up effect. It's just really cool to mess with. You know, you can use it on sounds like basses. You can use it on sound effects like percussions, anything. That's where you're going to get a lot of that dub character is from, things that emulate that old school dubby, springy reverb delay thing. Okay. But yeah, pretty cool drums, right? These hats are basic. Also for my sample pack, just, you know, quarter notes or whatever. The shaker, though, is something you're going to hear in a lot of deep dub, like Ternion Sound style stuff. Just because, I don't know, it's nice. It helps the groove. It helps thicken up the atmosphere a bit. You know, I would just dig through Reddit, try to find some shaker loops, you know, and have a good time with it. So this percussion right here is just same trick, fake dub room with the feedback up to give it that really cool spring effect, and just a random percussion I found. You know, this is the same thing. I just got a different snare with some slower delays, and it also sounds cool. That's a little pre-drop thing, plus some dubby style like fills. Which really, just look through Reddit. Look for dub samples on Reddit. There's plenty of stuff to dig through. You know, just look for drum fills. Just dig through all the samples and you should be good. Yeah. But drums aside, the basses are where the sauce often lies. So I'm going to start off with this first bass right here. And without these effects, it's about the same, just a bit less pronounced. So within Vital, you should notice some familiar things. You know, we have sine waves, harmonic series, FM, business, all that, right? Except there's a few tricks I like to employ. So let me actually make this from scratch so I can show you. So I'm sure if you're familiar with the channel, you know the harmonic series, you know the FM and stuff. It's really just a matter of pushing these things to their limit. So let's start off with a sine wave, right? Excellent. Let's turn off this EQ so we can actually hear it. Cool. Okay, so once you have your sine wave, listen very carefully. We're going to add another sine wave. Nobody's ever done this before. This is very advanced. But we're going to pitch it up and turn the volume down. Just because we only want to hear one playing and we want the other pitched up, because when we introduce this FM, it's going to be affecting the sound of this first oscillator based on where we pitch it and where we mess with this FM. So you're probably hearing already some good harmonic wubs, right? But a lot of times we would just leave it at that. You know, we would find a cool harmonic, maybe filter it, maybe process it a bit, volume automation, right? But we're not leaving it at that. In fact, we can get extra movement through messing with this FM itself. I just drag this LFO to it, and let's mess with the position. Already, that is some gas pack, as some would say. I turn up the frequency, so it's a bit faster, and it's just clean. You know, you can mess with the harmonic series. You can hit different harmonics. I just like this. Sounds fat. You know, just mess with all these parameters, and you really have unlimited fat wubs. So the first thing is modulating an FM gets you a much more like bubbly character, or much more movement to your sound, right? But the second thing for even more bubbliness is this low pass. I'm just going to apply the same LFO, put it down here. And what's happening is this peak right here, which, you know, it's kind of like an EQ peak. It gives it that wow, wow, wow character. What it's doing is accenting even further that like bubbly opening up of the sound. If you see it, it's the kind of wow, wow, wow. You see how it's kind of pulsing through these harmonics. That's what we're going for. You know, but after that, it's just customization. You know, this is the root of that really fat wub. I like to add chorus because stereo sounds nice. Vital chorus sounds really good. You can turn up the cutoff and turn on the spread, so it's only on the high end, just to keep that low end clean, not muddy. You can have multiband compression. Helps get it a bit louder, but it gets it a bit artifacty. You know, something you can do to combat this artifactiness, which you usually don't notice because it's usually not so focused in the mid-range, is you can just drag this down, I believe. And that basically makes it so it compresses that high band less, so you won't hear those noisy top end bits. You know, if you really want, you could also add distortion. More or less, you can try different modes. Really, the possibilities are endless with just tweaking these little bits here and there. But you know, that's basically the foundation of your fat wub. Pretty similar to this, in some ways, almost better, you know. But one thing I like to do on these wubs, as you can tell, I end up boosting these kind of mid-high bands a lot. So one thing you're going to notice when you're mixing deep dub is if you want it loud, you're going to run into a problem where it's just going to start clipping. You can already hear a bit of it if I clip it more. Yeah, it sounds really distorted, really messy, which you might want, but if you want that clean wub, distortion is going to be a problem. So a few ways I found to make it louder without distorting is mostly, let me turn this down, just a boost with an EQ. Because the sub is kind of its own thing, you know, we like to use a dedicated sub down here. But these mids and highs, you can really boost without a ton of clipping. While the sub, if you end up boosting it, you're going to easily run into that distortion, that clipping. So yeah, long story short, you can get a lot more loudness out of these mids, high end, because it doesn't clip as easily. Yeah. Another thing I added, which in the end didn't really make a huge difference, was this multiband compression. Just this preset, and I turned off the high band, so it didn't have those artifacts like before. And it helps a tiny bit, you know. Nothing crazy though, just some extra processing. You know, but that's the bubbly wub. And there's plenty of variations on it. So right here, we have a more harmonic type of wub, which I achieved in Vital through a very similar process. You know, except not similar at all. So pretty similar stuff, you know, we have this FM being automated. We have this filter opening up, all with this LFO. But I took it upon myself, yes, upon myself, all by myself. I shifted this LFO to less of a wub, more of a kind of, I don't know, like a rising type of sound. You know, just goes to show small LFO stuff can really mess with the sound. But you'll notice some more stuff here, right? So essentially we still have our harmonic series and we still have our sine wave, right, with FM. But I pitched this up twice as high, holding shift, dragging it up, and found a different harmonic until I found one I liked, you know. And then for some extra beef in that kind of low mid range, what you can do is add in another oscillator. I only use the tiniest amount, so much that it's barely noticeable. But also, you can mess with, you know, turn the level down, mess with the pitch of it. You can also move it up 7 steps, right? That'll also give you a pretty constant result, but you can just mess with the harmonic series, you know? And that's a really slept on trick, you know? I think Ternion Sound uses the operator where this stuff kind of comes naturally. I'll show some of that at the end. But, you know, just having some FM layers, especially on these sine waves, can add the slightest amount of beef and complexity to pretty basic sounds. You know, beyond that, you know, the classic chorus compressor, you know, basic stuff, multiband compression with a bit of EQ boost and the reverb just to kind of give it some different texture, add some atmosphere to the track, you know, all sorts of cool stuff to mess with. Now, for these more grittier basses, this is where that double FM trick I showed in passing really shines. So this looks pretty familiar. It's about the same as the last patch, except, you know, I mess with the harmonic positions, I mess with the pitches, mess with the FM. Same kind of filter effect with some distortion, except one thing I did, of course, you can mess with the cutoff and mess with how much it affects it, but you can also make the slope steeper. Gives it a much tighter kind of sound, which is cool to mess with, you know? But as you see, LFO like this, FMs, you notice it gives you some of that grit, especially when you start layering this FM oscillator 3. You know, right under here you can select any oscillator at 2, 3, 1. You know, I mess with all the positions. but you can hear it pretty easily. Without this, not a whole lot of grit, but with that FM oscillator 3 and a nice harmonic series, a lot more grit, you know. And really that's the magic of having multiple FMs. Kind of an underutilized tool. I'm glad I finally got to show it on the channel. And a bit of distortion never hurt anyone for some extra grit, and pretty much same processing effects, you know, nothing crazy, and pretty similar stuff going on down here. So for this bass, I took it upon myself to add a little variation after 4 bars. Pretty much the same riff, the same MIDI notes. I just messed with the sound design. I duplicated the patch and shifted it just a bit, because really that's all you need. Just pick different harmonic series positions, different FM positions. You know, you can mess with the FM with the LFO or not. It's up to you. Some more distortion for an even grittier sound. And you know, same filter opening, compressor adding some grit, and some chorus for the stereo. You know, pretty simple basis for the sounds. It's all going to be some variation of sine waves being FM'd, you know, harmonic series, different automations on the FM, different positions. You know, you can even make it plucky. I mean, there's so many endless variations, you know. I'll be here all day to show you all of them, you know, but that's deep dub for you. Okay, and the last bit here is just a sub. I just have it following the same MIDI from here. I just copied it down, you know, paste, copy, paste, you know, on and on. And for the actual vital patch, it's our good friend, the sine wave. You know, generally you want a dedicated sub, just a sine wave. You don't need to add any processing unless you want. Sine wave is just good. I think that's what Ternion Sound uses most of the time. But make sure on all your basses you have this EQ, cutting out anything below 100, because that's where the sub's going to be hitting, and you only want one sub going at a time generally. For some extra interest, you can add some volume automations like I did here. You can add it with an LFO and vital, or just by hand to kind of follow and accentuate some of these, some of the movement of the basses, the wubs and dubs. You know, I pretty much have it following, like it swells up here, swells up there, you know, it's beautiful, amazing. And then here I kept it a bit more sustained for just a bit more impact, you know. It's all cool stuff to mess with. You can automate the volume all the way, or you can automate just a little. You know, not a ton of options here, but you'd be surprised how creative you can get. And then the last bit of creativity, it's just a bit of pitch bend. You know, just in Vital, you can grab this pitch wheel, crank it, yank it around if it ever pops up, and add a little automation. Never hurt anyone. It's cool stuff. You know, you don't need your sub to be exactly following your notes. Oftentimes, Ternion Sound does, or they have it about following with some slight variations, you know, whether it's the kind of automation they use or the actual notes. You know, just mess with the sub. You know, it's deep dub. Really have fun with the sub. If you want, you could just solo the subs and the drum itself to be sure the riff slaps. Like, see, that's fat on its own. Okay. So the next question is, how do you write deep dubby riffs? You know, Ternion Sound definitely has some strong riffs with some strong use of silence in them, but let's actually get to writing one. So the main thing I think to worry about is not the notes you're hitting, it's more about the flow. So let me just hit like a note we can actually hear half decently. Sure, we'll do this. Sounds gross, not subby, but everyone can hear it. So let's just write a flow. You know, let's get our drums over here. Because I think that's important to how we decide what flow we want. Okay, come on, hurry up. Okay. And then we can just feel it out with our lovely intuition, musical intuition. Bam. Bam, bam. Sure, bam, 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 bam. And just on one note, you're good. And then for slight accents, you can just add a little half step. Bam, 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 bam. And then how about we move it up to the fifth? So, you know, generally this half step, the third and the fifth, theory-wise, is going to do you very well. You know, I have a whole theory video if you really want to dive into that. And just because I'm feeling it, I'm just going to have a little bit longer note. And I'm really liking that riff. You know, it just starts off with a rhythm. I think most people have a good sense of rhythm. Many people don't have as good of a sense of like notes to hit as harmonics, right? But if you just add slight little variations to the notes within your strong flow, you'll be off pretty well. Rhythm is key. You know, the notes, especially in bass music, rhythmic music, you can think of it more as accents at times. Yeah, but really writing riffs doesn't have to be hard. Think it out in your head. Really try to put the flow you have in your head into your DAW. And it might be hard, but you'll get better at it. And the better you are at it, the better you can create and the more fun you can have producing. You know, but that's about all I wanted to cover for this video. You know, a lot of similar stuff to our previous deep dub, just expanded upon. Oh, I actually forgot. So one thing to note is I have a whole video on operator for deep dub, right? But I believe Ternion Sound uses operator. You know, and operator by default has also a bunch of sine waves FM'd, so it's really the deep dub machine. And you see this is kind of like your FM amounts. This is kind of like your harmonic series. But one thing operator can do that others can't do, which you might want to get into, is the waves. You know, you can select slightly different waves for your harmonics, while Vital only has access to that one sine wave for the harmonics, right? And if you want a similar sound, like with the envelopes, you can just go in and shape this envelope. These are kind of like your LFOs. You see envelope, and then we could put the same envelope on this filter, put the envelope to 100, turn it on. Sure. And then we could, there we go. You know, it's really about the same as Vital, minus the GUI. You know, obviously the interface looks very different, and your LFOs are replaced by envelopes. But, you know, it can do some stuff Vital can't, and you can change like the FM sequence and all that. You know, watch my operator tutorial for more on this. But, you know, I figured I might as well put you on because I think that's what Ternion Sound uses a lot. But yeah, nonetheless, like I've been saying, Vital can get you a lot of the same results. Okay, so this is the actual end of the video. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Yeah, and I hope you learned. Be sure to add any suggestions or questions you have in the comments. Like the video, subscribe, check out my website, check out the Patreon for this whole project stuff and more. Also, check out the Discord where you can hang out with like-minded folks with my hands. My hands are in the Discord, and a lot of cool producer guys to chill with, right? But yeah, I don't know what else to say other than love you guys. Thanks for watching, and peace out.